what there will be some editing, obviously, for clarity and breadth. Some of the questions may be tossed out just because there was so much. And
I've done a lot of reflecting on my life and what I've done, so I don't stop now and do it. um, I guess I'm always a person who looks forward, not backward. I look forward to the next day, the next week, the next year, but I think at 90 I'm sort of doing it in the now. I'm not doing a lot of looking forward.
Where were you raised here in Columbus? Where were you raised?
Oh gracious, I was an orphan. I was born in Texas, Port Arthur, Texas, and when I was 5, we moved to St. Louis, and that's when I was orphaned, and went to live with my mother's brother's family, who had 3 boys. They had 3 boys, and my sister and I. And then that was up in Canaan, New York. And then later I had to leave there and go live with another aunt and uncle who lived in Pittsburgh. And when I was in high school and worked my way through Pitt, I lived with them.
So you graduated from Pittsburgh?
Uh-huh. And Carnegie Tech. In the 1960s, I joined what we called the women's movement, which in historic perspective now, when they're putting the history out on this, they call it the Women's Revolution. So that's what I did in the 1960s.
Where were you living?
Here, in the 1960s.
How many women were in your movement in Columbus, Georgia in the 1960s?
Quite a few. You'd be surprised. They were very quiet about it. And I still have a very quiet following because I became the mouthpiece after a while. But I had to be accepted. And I was accepted because I was never strident and never out telling everybody the way it ought to be. There were other women who were doing that, who were not necessarily Columbus natives. I consider myself a native at this point. And I participated through acceptable organizations like the American Association of University Women, who were part of this women's revolution, but that was an acceptable title, and I was on the faculty at Columbus College, so that was very acceptable to be in.
What were you teaching at Columbus College?
I was a librarian.
And
I was a professional librarian for about 40 years.
what does equality mean to you? What's your definition of equality?
Everyone should have the same opportunity, access to the same opportunity. And then they can, whether it's earning money or relationships with other people, in order to have the freedom to do what they want. You see, the restrictions on women over those years meant that we could not get credit on our own without a man, either our husband or our brothers or somebody, man signing for it. And that's what I'm talking about, removing all of those barriers. So we have access to the freedom to participate in society socially.
What was it like advocating equality, gender equality in Columbus in the 1960s and 70s?
It was there was a lot of resistance to it. They tolerated us, but you know, I never had any real bad backlash or anything like that. As I told you, when I did my work for it, I worked through these acceptable organizations so that it wasn't blatant and it wasn't strident.
So you weren't in their face.
Right. I did get in their face one time. I'll have to tell you this story.
Tell me, please.
And this was way before I got elected or ran for office. A friend of mine who was the woman of a very prominent man in town, and I went to call on the bank presidents. There were 3 major banks, and asked them if they would consider promoting women out of the teller position. They could be tellers or they could be secretaries, but we felt that they should have the opportunity to go up
To be loan officers and the
And,
like.
yes, and have other jobs. And they were very tolerant of us. They gave us no problem, no backtalk, because they knew that the Equal Rights Amendment movement was out there. And they were very polite. Of course, as I say, she was a very ranking woman. They didn't know, the two of them didn't know who I was from Adam. The third one did know me because he and I were in the same Sunday school class and at the First Presbyterian Church. But he didn't know me as a feminist or somebody that was out there to get help. But anyhow, he was the one that made the clinching remark. He said, I agree with you women. I know what's right, and I know that should be done, but, he said, if we did what you want, it would cost us too much money. So we didn't get our point across at all, because he thought we wanted one man to sit over here with this woman and have the two of them have the same job at the same time. So we really didn't get our point across. But anyhow, that was just one of the funnies that we had.
What year was that?
It was before I ran for office, so it must have been in the 70s.
Early 70s. I mean, we have a woman mayor.
Absolutely. Do we ever have a woman mayor? She is really super.
So you and Teresa friends?
Oh, absolutely.
And how do you think she's done as mayor?
I think she's the most outstanding mayor I have ever seen in this community.
Why do you say that?
She has gotten to the meat of the problems, and she has solved them positively. She has brought things out in the open. We can watch what goes on at council, and we know exactly where the money is. We know exactly where all the problems are, what they're doing about the fact that she's even taken hold of this health care and retirement funds, which are the things that are breaking all the big cities. She's got that under control. And when she had the chance to hire people to replace others, look at the quality people she put in there.
How has the General Assembly changed from the time?
Well, it isn't only the General Assembly, it's Congress and everybody else, or Congress and the Senate. They are all bought and paid for. And they only do what the special interests ask them to do. I no longer ever contact anybody up in Washington or anybody here in the legislature.
Why?
Because they all are tracked into these special interest deals, and they don't listen. I'll take it back. I did send a message to Senator Chambliss and Senator Isaacson about last week or so. I got back blah 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 blah. I could have written it. I could have told you exactly what they were going to tell me. So that's why I don't bother. They don't have any thoughts about it. It's just the same thing that you read over here, and somebody else has prepared it for them, and they read it. You know, there's just no. They're all bought and paid for. I mean, we're on a slippery slope. I want to tell you, we're on a slippery slope because they're not.
We as a country.
Yes, they're not doing a thing about the spread between the haves and the have-nots, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Wider and wider, I should say. And the oligarchs are now entering the scene with their unrestricted and unaccounted for money, and they're getting people elected that will do their bids. So where are we going?
Does this scare you?
Oh, absolutely. But it also makes me mad. Now, you know, I told you that I tweet under an assumed name because I stay mad, angry, angst all the time. And that's the way I get it out.
You tweet under this. You don't want to tell us what the assumed name is.
Oh, of course. Here it is right here.
Wow. How many years have you and Bob been married?
It'll be 63 this fall.
What's it like to be married to you?
To me? That's Bob. I can tell you. I must be perfect. Because he demands perfection. And he wouldn't have married me if I wasn't perfect.
I'm going to have to end it on that.